living sober, busy living sober, busy living sober. It's episode 455. I'm very excited that you guys are back. Good to see everybody that's back. And if you're here for the first time, welcome. So happy you're here. Remember to subscribe to my channel. And if you would be so kind and go check out my Patreon at www.patreon.com/busy living sober. And I am so excited that Mitch Motivates is here. Hi, Mitch. How are you?
Good morning. I don't know if you check your YouTube, but I subscribed.
I did. I noticed that. Thank you so much. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate that. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate that. I am so excited that you're here. And I want to talk about, for one, so I went on your website and I saw that you got sober when you were almost 19. First time you went and actually realized you had a problem was when you were almost 19, like literally a week away, days away. You could see 19
Yeah.
forward. And you went to treatment. Why did you go to treatment? What was that about? And that was in 2006, everybody. And we all know that that's my year. That's my graduating year. That's when I got sober. So I always love having somebody else who's in that same year.
Yeah, I mean, let's get right into it. And first of all, thank you for having me on. I love sharing my story. I don't care where, when, how, I'm in. Okay. Um, so I always was a good kid, but the first time I picked up alcohol, it just was different. It just felt like a warm apple pie on a summer day. Like, and school's out and summer camp starts next week. Like the freedom that I felt. So I just chased that feeling and I only drank to get drunk. It quickly progressed to weed, smoking pot, and marijuana, whatever you call it, every day. Then it progressed to multiple times a day. Then it progressed to switching friends. Then it to use the way I was using. This is all in high school. Then it progressed to missing classes, missing family stuff, was high all the time. One day, one of the girls that I used to smoke weed with was like, "Have you ever tried Coke?" And that just set me off. Like that took me off the deep end to my bottom very quickly. And within a couple of years, I was in rehab. So I use Coke like I use weed, like I use alcohol. It just was like what I did. I used at the bottom like I was doing Coke alone. I was stealing, lying, cheating just to get more. Um, and I at that time I had gone off to college. I was in Indiana in the middle of nowhere. If you know the University of Indiana, it's you fly into Indianapolis, you drive through basically an hour's worth of farm, and then you get to a college town. So I was alone using cocaine. I was like a degenerate by that time. I couldn't stop. Um, and this whole thing happened, and I could share more about it later if you want, but I wanted to answer your question. This whole thing happened. I went back to New Jersey, where I was born and raised, for a family weekend. I ran away from home. I went to a motel room because I couldn't stop using drugs and I couldn't stop. The only thing I know how to do was steal. So I stole a credit card. I checked into a motel room. I got drugs and I kept using. Sunday comes around. My parents had filed a missing persons report, like the back of a milk carton. Where's Mitch? Because I was supposed to be home with my family. And I ended up using all the drugs. I'm up for a couple days in a row. I find the yellow pages. Back then, they had yellow pages in every motel room. And I called this hotline, told them I needed help. They called my parents. Next thing I know, there's a knock on the door. It's like a couple police officers. They found me. I was missing. They took me to a hospital. I told my family I needed help. I started crying. I had IVs in my arm in the hospital. And a week later, I was in treatment. And that was a week before my 19th birthday. And I ended up being in that treatment center in Pennsylvania for 4 months. So it was like a whirlwind of like, I couldn't stop using, lying, cheating, stealing. And then I hit bottom, ran away, was missing, found, and then ended up in rehab. And that started my journey in sobriety.
Wow. Wow. Were you in Warnersville, Pennsylvania?
Yes, I was at the Karen Foundation.
Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
They do amazing work. It's interesting because you were young, and this is almost 18 years ago, right? It's almost 18
Long
years.
time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, 18 years ago. And was there like a history of alcoholism or drug addiction in your family?
I There is a little bit actually, but I can't stress enough. I grew up in the most wonderful home in the most wonderful neighborhood. I had everything I could ever want. I think that I have alcoholism and drug addiction, just like a random person has a chocolate or peanut allergy. You're just born with it. And when I ingest alcohol in any form at all, I, they say 1,000, one is too many, 1,000 is never enough. I cannot control or enjoy my drinking or drug use. It's just something I'm like, I am, and I've accepted.
And I'm the same way. It's so interesting because once we ingest it, it's like all bets are off. Forget it. You've let the
Yeah.
horse out of the stable. You know what I find so interesting? I just saw that Justin Timberlake, was arrested for a DUI yesterday in Sag Harbor. And, I really thought to myself, my first thought was, doesn't this guy have enough money to take an Uber? Like in 2006, let's face it, there were no Ubers for us to be taking. And I definitely never had enough money to have a driver sitting outside of every event I went to, where he does. But it's interesting how when we have this disease, it literally we're not bad people. We just make crazy decisions when we're in our addiction. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. And like, I, I could tell you a tremendous amount of horror stories, but the disease is more. And the disease is I will do whatever it takes to get more, commit crimes, do crazy stuff, because like that takes over. And, I look at homelessness or like petty robberies, and I'm like, they're probably an addict trying to just get money for more. You know what I
Mhm,
mean?
mhm.
And I look at these things, and so I can relate.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like for so long, especially when we were getting sober, there was this big, there was a lot more shame and there was a lot more of like, oh my gosh, like your mom could definitely not go and play mahjong or go hang out and, play tennis with her friends and be like, this is where my son is, right? She definitely wouldn't have done that. Where today, I think there's a little bit more
Yeah.
transparency and understanding. Would you agree with that?
Spot on. I mean, I could tell you stories. I was in the newspaper, and my mom bought up the newspaper when I was arrested on graduation night from high school at a couple local places, so no one else would find the newspaper. They used to, when I was in rehab, they parked my car in the garage to hide it. There is a lot of shame, and that is why I'm so passionate and I'm so open about sharing my story. You asked me before the podcast, do I want my last name is Leff. Do I want to go by Mitch Leff or Mitch Motivates? And I do that purposely, like Mitch Motivates to find me because my website is Mitch Motivates, my social media is Mitch Motivates. My book on the bottom it says, hold on, let's get this. It says written by Mitch Motivates.
Right.
Okay, like that's I want people to find me because I want to be open about sharing my story because that's how you break that stigma. And then the most amazing things happen in return when you share your story. People struggle, and that's why the name of my book is called My Addiction. We'll get to it. My Addiction, My Superpower. I want to encourage anyone, whatever they're going through, to make that into their superpower because that's what I did and it worked for me.
So tell me this, we're gonna go back to the beginning. So you were in treatment for 4 months, you get
Yes.
out, and what happens?
Well, just to backtrack, I was in treatment for 1 month and I thought I was going to go to the Jersey Shore and go to community college and like live at our shore house and like go to Ocean County College and just hang out like in Atlantic City or whatever. But like, you know, one of the tools that I always done is trusted the experts, listen to people. My parents went when I got when they found me in the hospital when I was missing. We went to an addiction psychiatrist. He recommended one treatment center, and we called them, and we were like, "When can we go?" Um, at the treatment center, they said, "Your son should stay for 90 days in our extended care program. He's 19." And I had realized like it's not normal to be in 19 and rehab. I should have been enjoying my first summer after my first year of college, or had a job or whatever. So we just said yes, okay, extended care. So I was in Karen for 4 months. Then they said there's this guy Scotty who's running a sober living in the Poconos in Bartonsville, Pennsylvania, and he used to work at Karen. He's a good guy, and Mitch should go there. So I went to Scotty's house and I lived there for 4 months. Scotty said, when you move out, I want you to take one of these guys and you're going to get an apartment together in this area. And I did that. And I just kept on listening to people. So many times people have it's called the special snowflake disease, that they think that the rules don't apply to, and I've just seen it time and time again. They think that they're special. Oh, not me. And my experience is I just listen to the professionals, and I've accepted. I took a step one. I've accepted that I it's not normal for me to be in treatment. There's probably something to this, that I'm an alcoholic or an addict, and I should listen to what people are saying. So that's always stuck with me, and it definitely contributed to my success many years later.
And so I want to, so what you mentioned earlier, and I think maybe even before we were recording, you relapsed during that time. And
Yes.
so there's so many people out there that are listening and they're like, well, wait a minute. What, you just said you were in treatment for 4 months and then
Yes.
then you were living in a halfway house for another 4. Now we're at 8 months. Then you
Yes.
move in with another sober person into an apartment. And because so many people think, and I don't know why, but like addictions, like breaking your leg, right? You go to the hospital and the hospital then fix your broken leg, and then you get to go home and they're all fixed. They're ready to go. You went to treatment. You were there for 8 months. You went to the halfway house. You did everything you were supposed to do. Why aren't you fixed? What did you do wrong? What were you thinking?
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, it's as simple as I always say. I was at the restaurant called the Sober Buffet, and instead of like having everything at the buffet, which they told me to, I like picked and choose what I wanted. So, yes, I listened to Scotty, and I lived with sober people. We got an apartment, but I wasn't my my recovery work was definitely slacking. I remember I only got a sponsor because in the halfway house they said if you get a sponsor and make it to step 4, you can have your car. So it's like selfish. And then like I started like hanging around the wrong people, and like I'm not perfect, absolutely far from it, but I have a lot of sober reference now. I started like, I mean, we used to do the craziest things in sobriety. Like we would buy eggs at Walmart and like throw it at drunk people at 2 in the morning. Like we were like, I was 19 years old. We did things. We would buy fireworks and just set them off in a random neighborhood, and this like, so I was heading down the wrong path, even though I was sober. And I was like, I liked fellowship and I love being around other sober people, but I didn't want to do like sponsorship. I didn't want to do the steps, but I like going to meetings. Like all these things, I didn't do everything. And my experience says if you don't listen, like it's just a warning, like the time and place will come when I will drink or use again. And I did. Um, I put myself in a situation that I met a girl, and for her birthday, we relapsed together, and I was living with sober people. So I learned, they're always, I'm very stubborn. So I usually have to do things my own way, realize they're wrong before I listen to people completely. So that's kind of what happened. And then I went, but I did such a good job in some other stuff. So I relapsed and I went right back to meetings. Yeah. And that was a strength of mine that I kept. Then like that next summer, I went away on a trip and I drank on the trip, and I was like, I'm far from home. No one will know. And then when I got back to America, I went back to meetings. Um, so like I did some things right, some things wrong, and today I made it through, and I'm able to share about it, my experience, strength, and hope.
And I want to ask you, spiritually,
Yeah.
were you raised with any form of religion?
Yes. I'm like a traditional Jew, and I was raised just to be traditional holidays, you know, family, and
A bar
I
mitzvah?
yeah, exactly. And I met a very important rabbi at Karen who helped me, but I always favored spirituality and having my own relationship with a higher power, and it's like a daily thing for me. Today it looks a lot different than it looked like last year, than it looked like when I first got sober, what my routine is for prayer and meditation, but it's huge in my life. I take the best aspects about my religious experience and put that mix with my spiritual experience. And that's definitely a strong suit today. My faith has kept me sober.
Yeah, because I don't know if you know Dr. Jordan Peterson, who's very popular these days, and you can find him all over the internet, and I absolutely adore him. I'd love to have you on my podcast if you're listening, Jordan Peterson. Um, but he talks a lot about sobriety and to be a sober human being, you have to have a relationship with God. It
Yeah,
seriously is spiritual, and I tend to agree that I don't think that this was my own power, like getting on my knees in Ocean City, New Jersey, August 14th, 2006, and saying, God, please, please help me. And I haven't had a drink since then. I don't think that was my willpower, really.
I love it.
I mean,
You
do you agree
100%.
with that?
I agree that one, I got myself into this mess, so something greater than myself needs to take me out of it, and I need to change my thinking somehow. And I'll tell you this, that I've done only the prayer and only the faith and no action, and I've done only the action and no faith. So faith without works is the formula, really. So it's like you can, like, I don't know your story and I want to, but I'm assuming you did something after you got on your knees and prayed to keep you sober, and that together. So for me, that's the magic formula: faith plus action.
That's one of my favorite book lines. It's
Yeah,
actually it's in the big book, but of course it comes from the Bible. You know,
I love
they
it.
yeah, it came from the Bible, and it's so interesting because I do believe that we can sit here and say, "All right, I'm going to go to a treatment center and they're going to make me better." And so many people I think walk into and like it's a big ticket when you go to care, and it's not really cheap. They don't whatever. It's very expensive. You write a check and you think that your loved one's going in there and they're going to get better like that, and they're going to come out and you can take them and do everything you've been doing all over the place, but you really can't. And you really have to start over and you have to get back to basics
Yeah,
because once you're a pickle, you can't be a cucumber anymore, can you?
no, and you're right. There is a power there that's so strong, and I've felt it. And there's been so many miracles and funny coincidences that God always seems to show me that He's there when I need Him the most. Um, and my story, I feel like, is an example of that, down to meeting you. So I'm grateful.
I love that because I think that is true. When I was first getting sober, somebody gave me a book and it was called God's Little Winks. And
Yeah.
it's like, is it a coincidence or is it a wink? Will you share one of those stories with us so people can hear and just see how God was working in your life really quick?
Oh my God, this is crazy because I was thinking of one as you were talking. Um, so I was living at Rutgers, in so basically after I left the Poconos, I transferred to Rutgers. They have a program for students in recovery in New Brunswick. I can't recommend it anymore. And I was living in the sober dorm. So I go away to this trip to the Middle East in the summer. I relapse. I come back. I lied to my psychiatrist. I was seeing a psychiatrist and I was being prescribed this medicine that I shouldn't have been taking. And I was getting high off of it. And I was taking like a bottle at a time of pills that were supposed to last me 30 days.
Mhm.
So I relapse and I'm in the sober dorm relapsing, hiding it. And so I'm up for like a day and a half on this speed medication. And like when you're up for a day and a half, when you sleep, you crash hard. So I had this necklace, not this one, but I had this necklace that I got like from my grandma or something, like a gold like Jewish necklace that I always wore.
A Star David.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a different one. It was gold. This is a new one. Um and I remember I always wore it. Like I love, you know, I'm proud of who I am. So I wear this necklace, never take it off. I go to sleep after a relapse in the sober dorm. I wake up and the necklace is off my neck on the bed. I'm not kidding. And I said to myself, this is God telling me that I need to, that what my path is. And it was so powerful that I knew that God was with me in that moment, telling me that my path is to be sober. And that wasn't my last relapse. It was like my second or third to last relapse. That was right before I got sober and been sober since. But that is a crazy moment that I'll remember that gold necklace off waking up in a fog, the necklace was off, the chain was perfectly on. It was I don't know how it came off my body, but it was there, and that was a spiritual moment for me that I knew God was in my life wanting me to be sober.
I love that. I love that
Yeah,
story. And I
yeah,
don't want to bring up politics too much, but what's going on in the world right now,
yeah,
and there's so much fear, and my father's Jewish, so I mean, I'm half. I always say I'm half. My other
same.
half's Catholic, but I totally believe in my faith, and I believe in, Jesus was a Jew. Let's be honest, and what's going on right now and all this fear. And I feel like a lot of people are picking up like that's the answer because they're so scared. And, the new buzzword anxiety. They have anxiety and there's nothing else to do. And now they've even made weed, which is part of your story, legal. What are your thoughts on all of that?
So I have a couple answers, and I'll tell you that I'm so proud of who I am and my story. And I have to remember that there will always be something else going on. I mean, you name it. And I can only share my story. And my story is that for me, I recommend I have to completely abstain from alcohol, drugs in any form at all, with the exception of nicotine, caffeine, and sugar. Those are the only drugs in my book that are allowed. And even then I can abuse them and have 6 cups of coffee a day, right? So um that's my story. Um I've really taken the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous to heart in my own life, really like trying my best to have like no opinion on outside issues in my own life, and that's giving me so much peace of mind.
Mm, mm,
And I live by this slogan that I really learned at work. I want to get to it. What my day job is today, that I live in New York, how I got here, and after I'm done, I really want to get to it. But I say to myself at work, do I want to be right, and do I want to be happy? And the answer is always, do I want to be happy? I'm I'm a I'm a proud Jew, and what's going on now is what I've seen is very disgusting, and there is a lot of people that have fear. But it's so funny because I know that God and the facts are on my side, being a proud Jew and being very much a Zionist and pro-Israel. And whenever anyone's challenged to the facts, the good side always wins. And we see that time and time again. And I'll give another example to the criminalization thing. Vancouver, Canada, fun fact, just recriminalized heroin, crack, some they just recriminalized some drugs that they made legal, and then they saw what it did to their city. So that's an example of what I just said. Like, the facts always win. So it's best for me to be happy, to not get involved with any political things, and just be happy and just know that, like, I'd rather be happy than be right. I mean, the thing in Vancouver is funny. My one of my cousins is super progressive, and she was like, "I don't want to travel to Vancouver. Did you hear how nasty it is with all the drugs being legalized?" Like, it's just the facts always win, and the truth always wins. So, I mean, if 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 they're playing with drugs being legalized, like, my message will, like, I'll get more popular because I'll be helping more people stay sober. I mean, it's that simple. I hope that's a good answer. Busy.
I love that. I love that answer. And I love that you mentioned your I hate to say real job. And you guys, if you're listening to this, I'm doing air quotes.
I'll
But
explain. I'll explain.
yeah, what is your real job? Because I think that I would imagine it's helping others. And I think that there's
Yeah,
some magic
yeah,
that Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, I don't know if it was them or I truly believe it was divine intervention, if to
yeah,
be honest, that it's two human beings
yeah,
working with each other and being honest with each other that gives us the joy and, it gives us the sobriety we have today.
yeah. I mean, I'd love to explain, and a lot of my story is in my book, which I'll wrap up talking about how I got to it. But for the longest time, I worked it was a great fit. I worked in recovery, in the recovery business, and I worked for a recovery company in New York City that we specialized in gender specific sober living. So what I went through after I left Karen, you leave a rehab, you leave treatment, or if you just need a lifestyle change and you live with us to help get back to your city, but in a nice environment. We do drug testing. There was a chef. Like, we provided a lot of services, and it really helped people transition back into their lives. So I love that type of work. Um, but today, I've transitioned. Now I work and I run a plastic surgery business, and I work in medicine, and I help people. But like, I, when I was using, I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't show up. So to me, having a job, having a day job and being a worker among workers that is unrelated to my recovery, but because of my recovery, I'm able to show up and do well, is one of the biggest gifts in my life, because it's proof that my sobriety was the bridge back to life, and now I'm able to show up to life and be a functioning member. Not only that, because of my addiction, it's my superpower. I am excelling at my job around other people, around a bunch of normies. I'm do very well. I worked my way up at the practice I'm in now. I've been there for 4 years, from part-time worker to executive. And that's because I've learned to show up early, stay late, be reliable, be of service, help others. These are things I learned in my sobriety, and I brought them into my workplace. So like, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful that I'm able to be a worker among workers, and I encourage other people to do that. And I talk about in my book. So like, I used to work in recovery. That was great for a time. It was bad for a time. I've been working at this medical plastic surgery business for a long time, and they call me the chief motivator. And but I missed the recovery business. I miss working in recovery, and I was brainstorming ways to give back. So throughout this amazing thing, like, I met a woman. She helped me hire a ghostwriter, and I ended up writing a manuscript for this book, My Addiction, My Superpower. And it came out in January, and it's the story of my, it's the subtitle is From Mania to Motivates: 12 Tips for Overcoming Addiction, Crushing Life, and Inspiring Others. So I wrote a published book, which you can buy on my website, Mitch Motivates, on Amazon. Look it up, My Addiction, My Superpower. Leave me a review. And I tell my story, and I give tips to do the same, to overcome addiction and to succeed in life as someone that's sober and recovery. You don't even have to be. I give life tips in here, and it's just really an accomplishment. And I was on a book tour, and I hired a publicity team. I mean, I had no money in my bank account when I was using. Now I'm have money to hire a publicity team to help write a book. And that's how we got connected, Busy. So it's like, it's God, it's full circle, and it's like my way of sharing my experience, strength, and hope, that I have this book and I'm able to talk to you.
And do you still go to 12-step meetings?
Yes, I
That's
do.
awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Your story's amazing. So you guys, if you want to reach out to Mitch, and I'll have a link to his book and
thank
how
you.
all of his social media and everything in the description, so you can reach out to him personally. It's been so great talking to you. I'm so excited. And hey, by the way, if anybody's listening in
South Florida.
South Florida, in Boca, just to the south of me, Mitch Motivates is coming on.
July 27th, Saturday. This is going to be amazing. So I went on the book tour, and I did a book signing at Boynton Beach in February, and Fort Lauderdale in February, and I connected to the manager of the Boca store. I love Boca. I know you live in Delray, but I love Boca. Um,
It's
and
right down the street, to be
yeah,
honest.
so we connected, and we picked a date for the summer because I wanted to get back at it. Not only that, um, my friend Matt wrote a book called Sway. He's in recovery, and he's the first child of a 9/11 survivor. His dad, unfortunately, lost his life in the towers. And then he was an addict, and then he got sober and wrote a book. So Matt lives in South Florida too. We're doing a book signing together.
Oh,
Me, Mitch Motivates, Matt Bocci, He is Book Sway. We're doing it together. We're trying to bring a lot of good vibes to South Florida at the end of July, because we want to spread our message. So yeah, thank
And
you.
guess what?
And
Busy's
you're gonna be
coming.
there
Busy's coming. I'm
because
gonna
I owe
come.
you a
So
signed book.
you're gonna owe me a signed book. I'm so excited to meet you. So if you guys are out there, you're gonna be in the area. You're gonna be in Boca on Saturday the 27th. Go to the Barnes and Noble in Boca. I don't how many. I can't imagine how many Barnes and Nobles there are in Boca, but we'll figure it out. And I'm
There's
actually gonna.
one.
There's only
There's
one.
Yeah, there's one in Boynton, Fort Lauderdale, but this Boca one is special. Busy.
Okay, where is it in Boca? Do you know? Is it on Glades? You don't
Not
know.
off the top of my head, but
Okay,
we're gonna
we'll
get
make
the
sure that
address
when
and
we
post.
get closer, we're gonna post it and let everybody know we're gonna all meet there. It's
I'm
been
so
a
grateful.
it's been a pleasure meeting you, and I'm so excited for you and everything you're doing in your life. It's just amazing. See, this recovery stuff works, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, look, I have an amazing life today. Um, I'm successful. I'm sober. I have a loving relationship with my family, my parents, my dog. I'm just, but at the same time, I've been humble by this process. And I know that it's just one day at a time. And that if I don't wake up and take the steps to stay sober, bad things could happen. So I'm just grateful I'm alive and sober today to share my experience, strength, and hope with you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. If you guys enjoy this, please share this podcast with your friends, family members. Subscribe to my channel. Go to my patreon.com/busy living sober. And until next time, everybody, keep getting busy living. So, bye, everybody. Bye, Mitch. Take care. See you soon.